Welcome back, perfect peeps. Today we're going to be talking about AWS Amplify and adding videos for both live streaming and video on demand. Let's get going. In order to get started using AWS, you'll have to sign up. This includes a 12-month free trial. Now, what it doesn't include is unlimited processing, so there could be charges involved with the course if you do a lot of video processing. So one of the first things that you'll want to do is install the Amplify CLI globally. When you do this, make sure you use the -G flag. So it's at AWS Amplify /CLI, and I'm doing @latest to make sure I'm pulling in the latest version of Amplify. Okay, now that that finished installing, the next thing that you'll need to do is run Amplify Configure. This is going to set up your Amplify environment so it connects out to the AWS cloud. So you should see a browser window open, and let me pull that into focus for everyone. And it should drop you into something that looks like this, making sure you've already signed up. This should be the view that you end up seeing. So after you're done, you can set up your configurations. So I'm going to be in the US East 1. If you pick a different region that's closer to you, that makes sense as well. So my username, I am going to specify Amplify CLI, and it's going to create that user for me. So let me jump back over. Sorry, I'm fighting with a couple screens here. So this is the Amplify CLI that it created. When you get to this point, you'll want to make sure that you are creating a new group, and that group is going to be called admin, and you're going to click on the administrator access. Now once that's complete, you can just hit forward all the way through the different screens, and that will become the user that we end up using. So once that's complete, hit enter. Now the access key ID should have popped up when you completed that last session. So let's go back in here. And if you had already moved past this, you can come into IAM and you'll see a new user in your users group for Amplify CLI. This is the user that we just created. Now the security credentials listed here have your access key ID, and then there is also going to be a credential that pops up that you'll want to keep secret. So I've moved that off screen for now. Copy both of those items and assign them into your credentials. Now once that's all completed, you should be linked up to create a new Amplify project. Now that we have our configuration set, we can run Amplify init. I'm going to give mine the name CodingCatDev, as I'm going to continue this tutorial so that we're doing a video chat back and forth. I'm picking JavaScript as a React application here, and then just setting all the defaults that it basically prompts me with. Because we already ran our configuration, you should be able to now use either default or whatever configuration name that you have selected. Now what's happening under the hood in AWS is it starts to create all of the Amplify project using CloudFormation. So it's actually reaching out to the cloud and initializing a new application within Amplify. And we can walk through that once this completes, or I'll jump in while it's completing so that you kind of get the idea of what we're looking at as the project continues forward. So that was pretty quick. We were able to complete that CloudFormation quite quickly. So let's go ahead and jump into our CloudFormation execution that it went through. So the stack that was out there, now I have a CodingCatDev stack name, and if we take a look at it, it'll show the creation status. So let's open up our new project in VS Code. You can do that by running either code and then a period at the end if you're in the folder, or just open it up from the file. So at this point, if you take a look, what we have created here is something pretty basic. It's got a Amplify folder, and then within our source, it just has what project the region is accessible in. And that's mainly because we don't have anything in our Amplify project, no APIs, no databases. So what we're going to be working through now is kind of adding that video. So let's check out what is in our project. So if you're on Amplify status, this is going to go out to the cloud and check on AWS, and it'll come back empty. So this next step is totally optional, but I want to set up CI/CD so that I don't have to think about the project as we push it going forward. So what we can do is go into AWS Amplify, and we can select the new application that you created, and I'm going to hook mine up to a GitHub repo. So once I select that GitHub location, I just log into my GitHub account and then authorize Amplify to make the connection, or AWS. So now that I'm in my GitHub, I actually have the cat chap already created. If you don't know how to do that, there's some other lessons out on our site on CodingCatDev that you can check out to walk through that. Some things that are in here, if you look, we're going to select our backend environment of dev that we created when we were setting up the Amplify init for the project. The rest of this, we just need to create a new role for the Amplify CI/CD to access all of our resources. So we'll create that role, and then once we're done with that, we can move on to the next step of adding video. So in this next section, I'm probably going to be doing things a little backwards than you normally would. So usually you'd probably create your React application and then add Amplify into it. But because we walked through the Amplify configuration portion of this and had a project already, I'm just going to create the React app within it. And then once that completes the installation, I'm actually just going to move the Amplify piece into that project so that we have one solid directory to work from. So now that I've moved that entire React app into the base directory, there's probably one file that we really should take in and update, and that is the gitignore. So Amplify had configured all of the items that we wanted, so let's take and move those from our current gitignore and place those into the React, create React app gitignore, so that we're making sure to exclude any of the files that we don't want copied into our repo from the Amplify environment. Now that we have all of the files where we want them and have moved everything, you can see in the source folder that we have our create React app. We can just run npm run start, and that's gonna fire up our browser so that we can take a look at our new React application. You'll get that awesome React spinning icon for our example. So there's our React app hooked up. And at this point, whenever we push to GitHub, we'll start to utilize a flow into our Amplify CI/CD. We haven't put that build trigger in. I think I'm going to do that within the second video. So just taking another look here at Amplify status, just making sure we have an empty Amplify setup still. Now we're going to get to the fun part, and that is the videos. Now, one of the confusing parts about the video piece is it actually comes out of AWS Amplify's labs, and so we need to install a separate part. So you need to do npm install amplify-category-video-g, and that's going to place a new item so that our Amplify CLI can start to utilize the video portion. So now we can run Amplify video add, and it will actually understand that we have a command that can run the video part. So this should pick up the configuration, and we're given two options. We're going to start out by building a live stream, and what that's going to allow us to do is stream from something like OBS or many other places that would allow a live stream to push out data. and it's going to encode that and then process it back so we can consume it on a web page. Now it wants you to name your current category, and for this, make sure you have all lowercase, all connected letters, otherwise it's going to throw a fit. I tried dashes originally and it didn't work, so you could just leave the name as is. Everything else you can leave as the defaults. So at this point, we have everything we need, and we're going to run Amplify push. This will start the CloudFormation command to go up to AWS and start creating the resources that are in our new Amplify folder out in AWS. So this is setting up the backend requirements for our app at this point. As this is kicking off, I'll start to take a look inside of AWS Console so that we get a little bit of a better view into the world of AWS and what's happening. So over in our console within AWS, you can search for Amplify and go into your app. Once you're in there, you can go to the backend and check out dev. So our dev is currently showing an overview that has a deployment status, and that is the same status that is coming out in our console, in our terminal. So here's each stack and what's occurring within those stacks. These are also known, like in Google's environment, these are called deployments. I like that name better than stacks, but AWS has unique names for all of its different items. So if you take a look at the logical IDs, these are all different items that it's creating at this point. So there's some IAM roles, some Lambda functions that are being created, and then the media part of this. So that video HMP chat live stream, that is another part that is crucial to the entire setup. So something cool, when you check out the resources, you can see the Lambda, the container, and the IAM within each stack. There's also items in your outputs that you should check through. So there's a lot of different things going on, very automated right now. If you're new to Amplify and AWS, that's what CloudFormation does for you. It's infrastructure as code, and it allows you to automate a lot of this creation that you would otherwise have to do very manually. So I'm going to speed through this at this point and check out the other side. So once CloudFormation was done, we actually came back and got a few different options here. And one of the things that pops up is, would you like to overwrite AWS video exports? You're going to want to select yes here so that you can take the URLs that were created by CloudFormation and pull them into our front end so that we can utilize them within our React project. Now don't worry if you kind of bypass this or cleared your console. The command that you can run is Amplify video get-info, and it's going to bring up your projects, and you can select it, and then you can check out those URLs, and it gives you the option to overwrite once again. So I'm going to go ahead and commit here so that I don't lose any of my changes going forward. I often commit or commit very often during AWS Amplify just to check out like what things have changed throughout the process. So now that we're up and running with our backend, what we're going to do is run Amplify Video setup-OBS and then select the current live stream program. So I didn't have OBS because I used Streamlabs OBS, and so it ended up putting that folder directly within my project. I'm going to go ahead and install OBS now so that you can see the full effect of using OBS. Just a reminder, OBS is a free program for streaming that you can download for Mac, Windows, Linux, whatever you're looking for. I'll put a link in the tutorial for downloading OBS. Now that I have mine on my machine, I'm going to rerun that same command so I can get the profile within OBS directly. So you'll need to select the project so that the streaming information is located. And here is the server and stream key. The stream key that it puts in there is a type of secret, so you won't want to give that to different people. If you've never done this before, what you can do is go into your video capture and any webcam you have hooked up I have a Lumix camera that I actually run through Camlink. And once that's complete, you can bring in any streaming video that you'd like to. So here you have my giant face at this point. I'll shrink it down, taking a look at OBS. So now when I'm ready to start transcoding, we're going to click that Start Streaming button. I wouldn't recommend doing that now because that will add to the cost, but then we can open up our React app to start looking at how we can bring in that stream. So if you've never done the streaming part before, what you can do is take the media store output URL from the bottom here or from the source folder, and we can run that through a cool little online tool called jwplayer.com. And once you place that in, you can actually see your live stream from OBS going through. So if you are ready to test that, you'll have to click Start Streaming. Just keep in mind again that there is a cost to this. I think through this whole tutorial, I ended up racking up $2 or something like that. So don't freak out, but I do want to mention that it does add up quickly. So similar to how we have AWS exports to make that linkage, what we also have is a video exports file. So within this video exports, you'll actually see in our app.js file, we have the source configuration, which is located right here. And when we click on that source configuration, it will show us this URL that we have fed out. So at this point, you'll just see kind of a loading window for our live view here. If I make that bigger, actually let me fire up our OBS side first. So let me bring up OBS real quick. So OBS has me over here in it, and what we can do is start streaming again. So once we start streaming, this video player should start to pick up and show that same stream. So give it a minute here, it should start to kick in. Let me just make sure nothing's going wrong. So it didn't do picture-in-picture, but the rest should be loading. Let me refresh once, make sure. There we go. So here is our video on demand, and we can do another one of these to make sure it's working. One of those, say hello, wave to everybody. And what you can do is take and maximize that. Sweet. So we have our video on, our live stream working. So the next thing that we're gonna end up doing is creating our video on demand portion of our React app so we can drop new video files in and see them show up on the site. So now that we basically have both our live stream and our video demand up and loaded into AWS's backend, let's just take a double check here. So Amplify status, that will tell us all of our resources now. It created some different items in the backend here as far as the build. Let's check. Where am I at? Build, resolvers, stack, schema. So when we look at this schema here, you can see that we have a model. Oops, sorry about that. You can see that we have our model type, which is a little skewed for some reason. And then our video on demand asset and our video demand object. So those are all built out into GraphQL. So now at this point, we're probably ready to start kind of hooking everything together. So one thing that we'll have to install so we can check out our live stream, instead of just using an external video player, we'll put one directly on our page. So if we go into our source, and then we take a look at index.js, it's just using an app within here. So if we take this app and take a look, this is exactly what is showing up when we run npm start. So here you'll see that spinning React icon again. So instead of having that listed, what we're going to do is take and install a new node plugin for video.js. So let's go ahead here. Let's create a new terminal window. Let's do there, video.js. So the AWS team actually provided a very nice little demo setup. So what we can do is drop that into our code, replacing almost everything. So we have all of our different details here. It's going to use this player, data VJS player, and here are the different options. So what we need to do is set up our stream to pick it up, and where that's going to come from, once we're in Amplify world, it should essentially be in our AWS exports. So now that we have this exported file, we can take a look at it, and this is kind of that the back end, or the linkage between our back end and our front end. So similar to how we have AWS exports to make that linkage, what we also have is a video exports file. So within this video exports, you'll actually see in our app.js file, we have the source configuration, which is located right here. And when we click on that source configuration, it will show us this URL that we have fed out. So at this point, you'll just see kind of a loading window for our live view here. If I make that bigger, actually let me fire up our OBS side first. So let me bring up OBS real quick. So OBS has me over here in it, and what we can do is start streaming again. So once we start streaming, this video player should start to pick up and show that same stream. So give it a minute here, it should start to kick in. Let me just make sure nothing's going wrong. So it didn't do picture-in-picture, but the rest should be loading. Let me refresh once, make sure. There we go. So here is our video on demand, and we can do another one of these to make sure it's working. One of those. Say hello, wave to everybody. And what you can do is take and maximize that. Sweet. So we have our video on, or sorry, our live stream working. So the next thing that we're gonna end up doing is creating our video on demand portion of our React app, so we can drop new video files in and see them show up on the site. Now that we've completed the live stream side of this, we're going to go ahead and move forward to the video on demand. Now just be warned, it is in beta. I think they're missing just the database update, possibly. I have a question on GitHub about it right now to check in that. So the video encoding portion of this, Apple HLS, is pretty sweet. I'm not sure if there's a cost difference based on what you use, but I would leave this for the defaults. We're not going to use a production environment, so you can say no. And then for the GraphQL API, I did select yes, and that's where things are a little questionable. So still kind of working through that part. So we're not going to cover the API side of this in this tutorial. I'm going to do a follow-on where we start to build out like a Marco Polo type of app where we can send videos back and forth, and then finally have a kind of an ultimate stream of all of our video chats back and forth that someone can pull down. So if at this point you are looking to skip the entire API portion of this, you don't have to select any of this, but for a simple Cognito setup for a user pool, you can just use the base email setup, and then if you want to use other provided third-party services, I chose to use both the Amazon part of that as well as the Google side of it. So grab those keys and you'll have to slap them in as you move along here. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this part up. It's just really entering a lot of basic OAuth type of setup where you need redirects and things like that and the social providers. After you get done with that, you should end up with a GraphQL endpoint that we can use later. And it has different models and things within it. I'm going to cover that in more detail in a follow-on video where we start building out the video chat application itself. Right now, we're just going to focus on the Amplify side of things. And so we're going to run the Amplify push once again. And you'll see everything else is updated except for our live stream. So it knows that we haven't changed that in any way. And we're just adding the new video on demand as well as all of the GraphQL items and the user pool for Cognito and things like that. So now we can push that and we'll watch it go up through CloudFormation once again. So let me delete this other one because we don't need it anymore. So AWS VOD, what that's going to do for us, it's going to create all of the different helpers and functions that we'll need for our video. So the first thing that you want to look at is where this all created. So I've laid it out in a bunch of different tabs. And I wanted to show you in CloudFormation what the final step was. So it created many of our buckets and also created a CloudFront endpoint for us. So if you are into your stacks and you end up seeing the different descriptions over here, you'll end up seeing the HMP cat chat VOD or whatever you named yours. And when you go into that, you'll actually see the VOD output under these output events. So you have events, resources. Events are going to show you a lot of what it did. The resources are what items it's setting up. So many Lambda triggers, media convert, and we can take a look at what that does. And then it outputs to this VOD output URL behind CloudFront as a CDN, which is just pointed at our S3 bucket. So at this point, let's go ahead and give this a try. Make sure, yep, things are off. I want to make sure this is cleaned up a little bit. So at this point, if I go back to our React app, refresh it once, you'll see I started to create another video down here. So let me jump into our React app. Here's our app.js file. That is why. Okay. So what we're going to do here is take and create a new video player below ours. And the video on demand JS options, once we ran that CloudFormation piece and it created all of those different utilities, it also put another AWS output video endpoint. Now be careful with this. It was a little tricky, and maybe they'll update it after the beta, after it comes out of beta. When it created my endpoint for this one, the live version, it actually put the full HTTPS URL in here. Now what kind of tricked me at first, I thought it was going to do the same, and I didn't look, and so I actually kept erroring out until I added the HTTPS endpoint onto this. So we're going to run a test just to make sure this works, and I'll show you each part of the flow as we go through it. So here is one of the buckets it created. So in Amazon S3 we have this HMP cat chat VOD dev input video, and what I'm going to do here is just drop a new video in called media convert test. We're just going to upload that, no problem. You can't see it's actually uploading down here. Okay, so it uploaded to our bucket. And now what what is on this bucket, if we were to take a look at the access points, nope, sorry, I always stumble in here. Properties, okay. So there are four active notification events that occur during this. And all of these are filters that a Lambda is looking for. So I dropped in an MOV file. It could have been a MP4, MPEG, whatever you're looking for here. And what that did was trigger a Lambda. And so the Lambda that's set up, and if I go back, let me just show you what was set up for this. So this input watcher, you know, is being triggered off that input bucket. So at that point, this will trigger, and it will, if you read through this, it'll send it over to our media convert. So the media convert will create a new job to process that video. So I've run a few tests. Here is our latest one, and it's this job, and it's going to output exactly what we're looking for, multiple different formats of that same video. And now, once that was created, it dumped it off into an S3 bucket. So it will take and now trigger to our output bucket. So this output bucket has a new folder created in it with the file name, media convert test, and it's got a HLS streaming setup in here. So now that that has the output, we can go into essentially at that point we have everything we need. And remember, our S3 bucket for this output has CloudFront URL on it. So if we jump back to VS Code, this is our CloudFront URL for our S3 bucket, and we're going to take and set that into a new video on demand for Video.js, and we'll just save it.
So this will be our
you just heard it kick off.
Test if the media convert actually works. Let's try it.
So this is the bottom one, the non-streaming one. So I'll replay here.
So this will be our recording to test if the media convert actually works. Let's try it.
So at this point, we have a process for not only capturing live streams, but a video on demand setup as well. Just straight out of the box from AWS Amplify. Really not much effort here at all to see both of those versions. So the next step is to continue kind of creating probably a chat app that will go back and forth. Think of Marco Polo. So each side of this will capture a video, and then we'll put it all together, and whenever they want to finish it, we'll actually upload the entire MP4 or whatever we decide we want to load up, and then transcode it and go back and forth. So I just want to keep this as like a basic video for how to set up Amplify, how to set up some video setup, and then I'll make a follow-on video how to start to use Cognito for the login and actually kind of set up a video chat back and forth. So look forward to that next video coming out. Thanks.